The lights just went out, not the flicker of a storm, the permanent silence of a grid-down event. The hum of the refrigerator dies. The phone in your hand loses its signal bar by bar. Outside, car horns begin, confused, then frightened. You check the window. Streetlights are black. The city skyline, normally bleeding orange into the night sky, is a silhouette of shadow against slightly darker shadow. Your heart accelerates. You tell yourself it's temporary. The power company is working on it. Help is coming. Nobody is coming. In 72 hours, the water stops flowing from your tap. In 96, the shelves are stripped by panic. By day 7, the pharmacies have been looted, the hospitals overwhelmed, the police missing from their posts. You are alone with whatever you have stockpiled, whatever skills you have practiced, whatever mental models you have built for catastrophe. The unprepared are already dying. Diabetic crises, dehydration, violent encounters over the last gallon of milk. The marginally prepared are discovering that their gear is insufficient, their knowledge theoretical, their optimism fatal. This video is not about fear. It is about the specific 15 pillars that separate survivors from statistics. Skills over stuff. Redundancy over hope. The hard truth that preparation is not a product you buy. It is a lifestyle you build. One disciplined decision at a time before the darkness falls. The economic collapse is not theoretical. The grid-down scenario is not science fiction. It is a probability that increases with every passing month of instability, and when it arrives, you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall to the level of your training. Welcome to the deep dive. These 15 items are not suggestions. They are the walls of your fortress. Build them now or be buried beneath the rubble. You think water is the problem. You're wrong. In a grid-down scenario, water is everywhere. It's in the sky collecting on your roof. It's in the creek 3 blocks from your house. It's in the puddles forming in the gutter after the first rain. The water isn't the enemy. The invisible killers inside it are. Bacteria, viruses, parasites, chemical runoff. These are the wolves waiting in the dark. One swallow of contaminated water and you're vomiting blood within 48 hours. In an SHTF scenario, that death sentence comes from dehydration caused by your own body trying to purge the poison. The irony is brutal. You die thirsty, surrounded by water you cannot drink. The sheep, the unprepared masses, will do exactly what you expect. They'll boil water in old paint cans without understanding chemical contamination. They'll drink from crystal clear mountain streams because it looks clean, ignoring Giardia cysts floating like microscopic glass shards. They'll panic buy cases of bottled water from looted grocery stores, fighting over plastic bottles that run dry in 3 weeks. Then they'll drink from the wrong puddle. Then they'll die in their own homes, surrounded by empty jugs. Because they never learned the skill that matters more than stockpiling. You need layers. Gravity-fed filters like the Sawyer squeeze or Berkey systems eliminate bacteria and protozoa down to 0.1 microns. Chemical treatment, sodium hypochlorite, pool shock, military-grade iodine tablets kills viruses that filters miss. UV pens sterilize clear water in 90 seconds. And when everything else fails, the SODIS method, clear PET bottles, 6 hours in direct sunlight, ultraviolet radiation destroying DNA of pathogens. No fire needed, no moving parts, just knowledge and patience. Start now. Test your methods. Fail when the stakes are low. Because when the taps run dry and the pharmacies burn, water purification isn't a convenience. It's the line between walking out alive and being buried in your backyard. The cold kills you before the hunger does. In a grid-down winter, hypothermia sets in when your core temperature drops 2 degrees. You shiver uncontrollably. Your judgment clouds. Your hands become clubs that cannot strike a match. Fire is the wall between you and the reaper, but most preppers build that wall with a single brick. 1 disposable lighter, 1 Bic in a bug-out bag. That plastic cylinder holds maybe 3,000 ignitions. Then it's dead weight. In a prolonged SHTF scenario, that's not a plan, that's a countdown to freezing. The sheep carry one method and call it prepared. They stuff a gas station lighter in their glove compartment and assume they'll always have it. They don't test it in the wind. They don't consider that butane fails in sub-zero temperatures. They don't think about the humidity that turns strike anywhere matches into useless sticks. When their single lighter leaks or gets crushed in a pocket, they panic. They rub sticks together like Boy Scouts on a camping trip, wasting precious calories and daylight while their fingers go numb. Then, they die in the woods, surrounded by dry tinder they couldn't ignite because they trusted their life to a $3 convenience store item. You build a pyramid of ignition. Base layer, 3 disposable lighters minimum, vacuum sealed against moisture. Second layer, stormproof matches dipped in wax, burnt underwater, reigniting in gale force wind. Third layer, ferrocerium rods that strike 3,000-degree sparks regardless of altitude or temperature. Fourth layer, tinder that catches those sparks. Cotton balls saturated with petroleum jelly, stored in film canisters, burning for 12 minutes straight. Fifth layer, solar magnification, magnifying glass, char cloth, steel wool, and a 9-volt battery. Each method covers the failure of the last. Each tool fits in an Altoids tin. Test them all. Practice with frozen hands. Light fires in rain. Because when the temperature drops and your family is huddled under space blankets, you don't get a second chance to get warm. Blood doesn't wait. In an SHTF scenario, a deep laceration spews arterial blood in rhythmic pulses. You have minutes, maybe less. The untrained freeze. They stare at the red spreading across concrete, paralyzed by the reality that their YouTube education ended at "buy a first aid kit." They rip open a box of band-aids while someone bleeds out. They apply pressure with trembling hands, but they don't know where the pressure points are. They don't know when a tourniquet becomes necessary. They watch a life end because they confused owning supplies with possessing skills. The sheep stockpile ISO kits with expired ointments and plastic tweezers. They feel safe because the box says emergency in red letters. They don't inventory it. They don't know the difference between gauze and non-stick pads. They can't distinguish a clean wound from a contaminated one requiring irrigation. When infection sets in on day 3, fever, red streaks climbing the limb, pus turning yellow-green, they have antibiotics but no knowledge of when to use them, in what dosage, for how long. The infection wins. The limb comes off. Or the sepsis takes them slowly over 2 weeks of agony because they thought preparation meant shopping. You build a system. First, hemorrhage control. Israeli bandages, quick clot combat gauze with kaolin clay, cat tourniquets proven in Iraq and Afghanistan. Second, airway and breathing, nasopharyngeal airways, chest seals for sucking wounds. Third, basic trauma, sterile saline for irrigation, betadine, suture kits with curved needles, staple guns for scalp wounds. Fourth, pharmaceuticals, broad-spectrum antibiotics, doxycycline, amoxicillin, ciprofloxacin, rotated annually, dosages memorized. Fifth, reference, a wilderness medicine manual, waterproofed because your memory fails under stress. Get training. Stop the Bleed courses are free. Wilderness First Responder certification takes 72 hours. Practice wound packing on pork bellies. Because when your daughter's femoral artery is severed by shattered glass, you don't get to Google how to apply a tourniquet. Your body will betray you. If you take pills every morning, blood pressure meds, insulin, thyroid hormones, antidepressants, heart medication, you're already in a countdown. Most prescriptions come in 30-day supplies. That's not a health system. That's a leash. The moment supply chains fracture, the pharmacies lock their doors. The just-in-time delivery system that keeps shelves stocked operates on a razor's edge of 72 hours. In an economic collapse, those trucks stop. And when your last pill dissolves in your stomach, your chronic condition becomes a death sentence. Diabetics enter diabetic ketoacidosis within days. Hypertensive patients stroke out from withdrawal. The physically dependent suffer seizures. The cold math is simple. Without continuous medication, the sick die first. The sheep trust the system that binds them. They refill exactly on schedule, never asking for extras. They believe insurance limits are carved in stone, federal laws immutable. They panic buy expired antibiotics from fish supply stores when the SHTF scenario arrives, poisoning themselves with tetracycline degraded into toxic compounds. They raid veterinary clinics for insulin, guessing at dosages, killing themselves with hyperglycemia. They go cold turkey from psychiatric medications, hallucinating in withdrawal, becoming dangers to their own families. They die addicted to a system that abandoned them, clutching empty orange bottles because they never learned the system has loopholes for the prepared. You build a buffer. Start with honesty. Tell your physician you're preparing for natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, blizzards. Request 90-day supplies instead of 30. Most doctors accommodate disaster preparedness legally. Rotate your stock. Use the oldest, replace with new. Store in cool, dark, dry conditions. Medications degrade twice as fast in heat and humidity. Insulin requires refrigeration. Invest in portable coolers with chemical ice packs. Ask about stability. Some meds last years past expiration if stored properly. Others become lethal. Know the difference. Build a medical spreadsheet. Dosages, indications, contraindications, alternatives. For controlled substances, the conversation is harder but not impossible. Pain management contracts can include emergency overrides. Be the patient who plans, not the one who panics. Because when the grid goes down, your pharmacy isn't reopening, and your body doesn't care about your excuses. Injury turns you into a prisoner. A twisted ankle, a fever burning at 103, a gash across your palm that throbs with every heartbeat. In these moments, you are not a chef. You cannot stand at a stove. You cannot measure water. You cannot wait 20 minutes for rice to absorb heat. Your body demands fuel now. Immediate dense calories to fight infection, repair tissue, maintain core temperature. But your pantry is full of raw beans and hard wheat berries that require boiling, soaking, processing. You are starving surrounded by food you cannot eat. The weakness compounds. The dehydration accelerates. You fade while bags of brown rice sit untouched 5 feet away. The sheep stockpile bulk grains because bulk feels prepared. 50-pound sacks of dried beans, buckets of oats, vacuum-sealed wheat kernels. They calculate calories per dollar, patting themselves on the back for frugality. They ignore the reality of the SHTF scenario. Fuel is scarce, water is contaminated, time is blood. They own the ingredients for a feast but lack the energy to build the fire. They attempt to cook with head wounds, with dysentery, while fleeing through hostile territory. They abandon their food stocks in bug-out situations because dried corn doesn't travel well. They die hungry with full pantries, victims of their own optimization for peacetime convenience. You cache grab-and-go energy, shelf-stable food that opens with fingers, not tools. Single-serve pouches of tuna with easy-pull lids, no can opener. 26 grams of protein, eaten cold in 30 seconds. Peanut butter packets, 190 calories each, requiring zero digestion effort, lasting 2 years unrefrigerated. Mixed nuts, fat, protein, salt, energy density that kept Roman armies marching. Honey in plastic tubes, antibacterial, infinite shelf life, instant glucose for brain function. Granola bars, jerky, chocolate bars, foil pouches of pre-cooked rice. Each item is a complete meal requiring no heat, no water, no clean dishes. Calculate 3 days of zero cooked calories per person. Store them in your vehicle, your desk, your bedside, because when you're bleeding and the predators are circling, you don't get a kitchen timer, you get survival. Darkness is a weapon against you. When the grid goes down and the streetlights black out, your biology becomes a liability. Humans are diurnal creatures. Our night vision is pathetic, 10 times worse than cats, easily blinded by sudden light. In pitch black, cortisol spikes, spatial awareness collapses. The stairs become a fracture hazard. The loaded firearm becomes a tragedy waiting to happen. Your mind invents threats in the shadows because it cannot confirm safety. Darkness doesn't just impede you, it terrorizes you. And terrorized people make fatal mistakes. The sheep rely on their smartphones. They drain precious battery, illuminating the bathroom with a blue screen, never considering the finite reservoir. They own one mag light with corroded D batteries from 2019. They light candles without stabilizing them, setting fire to their curtains in hour 6 of the blackout. They navigate by touch, stumbling over debris, breaking ankles, discharging weapons at shadows. They sit in suffocating darkness, paralyzed, waiting for dawn while predators with night vision and preparation move freely. They are blind sheep in a wolf's paradise. You create a constellation of light. Primary, LED flashlights with lithium-ion rechargeables. 1860 cells maintain voltage in cold where alkalines fail. Phoenix Olight Streamlight. Names that mean waterproof, impact resistant. Output measured in lumens that blind threats. Secondary. Headlamps. Black diamond. Petzl. Keeping both hands free for weapon retention, wound care, mechanical repair. Tertiary. Solar charging stations. Goal 0. Anchor powerport. Harvesting daylight to resurrect dead batteries indefinitely. Quaternary. Kerosene lamps. Glass-globed Aladdin mantles casting 60-watt equivalent brightness for 12 hours per fill. Emergency. Chem lights. 8-hour glow sticks. Marking hazards. Signaling without batteries. Deploy layered lighting. Task lights for precision. Area lights for security. Candle lanterns for psychological comfort. The dancing flame signals normalcy to the primitive brain. Store fuel in metal cans. Rotated annually. Test blackout scenarios monthly. Because when the darkness presses against your windows and you hear glass breaking, you need to see the threat clearly. And you need to see the iron sights on your rifle. The invisible killer spreads faster than bullets. Cholera, typhoid, dysentery, hepatitis A, pathogens ride fecal matter like highways into groundwater. In the 1850s, London's Broad Street pump contaminated one well. 600 died in weeks. In modern SHTF scenarios, sewage treatment plants fail within hours of grid down. Pipes back up. Toilets become fountains of disease. One infected family member contaminates the entire safe house. Death comes not from dramatic violence but from explosive diarrhea, 48 hours of fluid loss, organ collapse while you're squatting over a bucket. The humiliation is complete, the dehydration is fatal, and the water you conserved for drinking becomes your executioner. The sheep pretend sanitation solves itself. They keep using the toilet until it overflows, then defecate in plastic bags they seal and forget. They don't wash their hands. They don't understand that norovirus spreads via microscopic particles on doorknobs, on shared utensils, on the rice bag everyone touches. They dump waste too close to water sources. They contaminate their own wells with E. coli from shallow latrines. They die cramping on the bathroom floor, if they have a bathroom, surrounded by family members too weak to bury them, because nobody taught them that hygiene is a tactical discipline, not an automatic function. You build a waste warfare system. Primary, the 2-bucket method. Bucket 1 for liquids, diluted 10.1 as immediate fertilizer. Bucket 2 for solids, lined with heavy-duty contractor bags, each deposit covered with sawdust, peat moss, or kitty litter to eliminate odor and begin composting. Secondary, lime powder or bleach. Calcium hypochlorite kills pathogens on contact. Tertiary, dedicated hand washing station, 6 liters of water, a foot pump or spigot, soap suspended in nylon stockings to prevent waste. Quaternary, feminine hygiene, months of pads, tampons, or reusable cups sealed in Ziplocs. Infection from poor menstrual hygiene kills silently. Dig latrines 100 yards from water, 2 feet deep, line between uses. Burn or bury the bags when full. Wash hands like your life depends on it, because it does. Because cholera doesn't care about your rifle, it only cares about your sewage. Seeds in foil packets are not a meal. In an economic collapse, unplanted seeds are just potential. Potential that rots, molds, or fails to germinate because you stored them wrong. The fantasy is simple. When the grid goes down, you'll till the backyard, scatter your survival seed vault, and harvest abundance in 90 days. The reality is humiliating. You plant cool season crops in July, you overwater, you are underwater. You don't know your soil pH, so your tomatoes blossom and rot. You don't recognize aphid infestations until they've sucked the life from your squash. You don't know when to harvest, how to cure, how to store without mold. The locusts come, the blight spreads, and you watch your family starve surrounded by failed plants you didn't know how to grow. The sheep buy heirloom seed banks in metal cans and call it food security. They stockpile thousands of seeds they've never sprouted, from varieties they've never tasted, for growing zones they don't understand. They plant in native soil compacted by construction, depleted of nutrients, poisoned by lead paint from the old house next door. They water at noon, scalding the leaves. They don't thin seedlings, so plants compete themselves to death. They don't save seeds, so next year they're dependent again. They approach food growing like a lottery ticket. A magical solution requiring no skill, no sweat, no accumulated failure. They die in their gardens, poisoned by nightshade leaves they mistook for edible greens, because reading about oxalic acid isn't the same as knowing plants by touch. You start now, you fail now. You plant 5-gallon buckets on your apartment balcony. You test soil composition, sandy, loamy, clay, learning drainage and nutrient retention. You study your growing zone, last frost date, companion planting. You battle squash bugs with neem oil. You learn succession planting so crops ripen continuously, not all at once. You save seeds from open pollinated heirloom varieties, true to type genetics, no sterile hybrids. You compost kitchen scraps, building black gold from waste. You practice calorie per square foot calculations, potatoes, beans, winter squash, dense calories that store without refrigeration. Food growing is muscle memory. It's understanding weather patterns by instinct. It's the hard calloused hands that know when a melon is ripe by the sound of the thump. Start small, fail cheap. Because when the supply chain snaps and the canned goods run out, you don't get a practice season. You get hunger. And the soil doesn't forgive your ignorance. The zipper fails at the worst moment. In a grid-down scenario, your primary pack, the one holding your water filter, your ammunition, your medical supplies, suddenly gapes open on a mountain trail. A boot sole separates in freezing rain, turning every step into a slip hazard. The solar panels wire frays, killing your only power source. And you have no replacement, no Amazon Prime, no hardware store, no cobbler. The chain of supply that delivered perfect goods to your doorstep has been severed by economic collapse. You are now the manufacturer, you are the repair technician, and if you cannot improvise, you lose the tool, you lose the mobility, you lose the edge that keeps you breathing. The sheep are consumers. They buy new when old breaks. They discard socks with holes, purchase replacement gear instead of maintaining heirloom equipment, and outsource every mechanical problem to specialists with specialized tools. They own duct tape, but don't know the difference between tensile strength and adhesion. They try to sew with thread too thin for canvas, watch seams rip under load, lose supplies in the mud. They carry sharpened knives but can't sharpen them, honing steel mysteries, whetstone angles they never learned. They depend on the system of endless replacement, so when replacement stops, they're surrounded by dead gear, broken weapons, leaking containers, non-functional shelter. They are modern primitives, helpless without industrial support, watching their equipment inventory shrink daily towards zero. You become the maker. You learn sewing, saddler's needles, waxed thread, canvas patches, speedy stitcher awls punching through leather. You master sharpening, Japanese waterstones at 1000 and 6000 grit, maintaining 20-degree angles on blades, understanding the difference between steel types. You collect the adhesives, Gorilla Tape, JB Weld, shoe glue, epoxy resins, knowing what bonds to plastic, to metal, to rubber. You stock wire, stainless copper, baling wire for lashing, safety wiring for critical fasteners. You understand mechanical advantage, pulleys improvised from carabiners, ropes rigged for hauling. You practice now, you mend your jeans with sashiko stitching, you resolve boots with shoe glue and rubber from bicycle tubes. You sharpen every knife in your kitchen to hair-splitting edges. Because in the SHTF scenario, your gear is your lifeline, and the man who can keep his gear running keeps himself running. While others abandon broken equipment and grow weaker, you tighten, stitch, bond, and improvise. You are the repairman. You are the survivor. Your muscles lock up without warning. In a grid-down scenario, you sweat constantly, hauling water, cutting wood, patrolling perimeter. Sodium leaves your body with every drop of perspiration. Without replacement, hyponatremia sets in. Headaches blur into confusion. Nausea becomes seizures. Your heart, an electrical system dependent on sodium-potassium exchange, misfires. You die of cardiac arrest clutching your chest, surrounded by gallons of fresh water you drank but couldn't retain. The irony is chemical. Pure water without electrolytes flushes the very salts your nerves require, diluting your blood until your cells swell and burst. The sheep ignore salt because it's cheap. They buy fancy Himalayan pink crystals for the kitchen and ignore bulk storage. They don't realize that modern diets provide excess sodium through processed foods. When the economic collapse hits and you're eating plain rice and hunted game, your salt intake crashes to zero. They watch meat rot in summer heat, knowing salt preserves but not knowing the ratio. 20 pounds of salt cures 200 pounds of pork. They don't store it properly. Iodized salt in paper boxes absorbs moisture, clumps, dissolves into useless brine. They have gold and silver for barter but no salt. Failing history's lesson that Roman legions were paid in salarium, salt, because without it, soldiers couldn't march. You stockpile the foundation. Pure sodium chloride, canning salt, iodized for thyroid health, stored in 5-gallon buckets with gamma lids moisture sealed. You calculate needs. Minimum 1.5 grams daily for survival, up to 10 grams for heavy labor in heat. You learn preservation, rubbing salt into fish flesh, packing ham in salt boxes, creating environments where bacteria cannot survive. You understand barter value. When currency collapses, salt becomes portable wealth, divisible, universally necessary. A pound of salt trades for ammunition, for medicine, for labor. Salt is cheap now. It lasts forever if kept dry. Without it, you die convulsing. With it, you preserve food, maintain nerve function, trade for power. The most valuable mineral isn't gold. It's the white crystals the sheep season their fries with, never seeing the survival weapon in their shaker. Your antiseptic runs dry. In a grid-down scenario, infection is the silent predator stalking every minor abrasion. A superficial cut brushing against rusted sheet metal becomes a gateway for aggressive Staphylococcus and Streptococcus colonies. Without immediate sterilization, healthy tissue turns necrotic within 72 hours. The fever spikes uncontrollably. Red streaks climb the lymphatic channels toward your heart, signaling systemic sepsis. You reach for isopropyl alcohol, but the pharmacy shelves were looted on day one. The single bottle in your medicine cabinet evaporated years ago, its seal compromised. You're now watching a minor laceration metastasize into fatal blood poisoning because you depended on finite medical supplies while ignoring the eternal multi-tool hiding in plain sight. The sheep see liquor as moral weakness. They stockpile rubbing alcohol in pint-sized bottles, never considering the 3-year expiration countdown or the compromised potency when exposed to air. They ignore shelf-stable 80-proof vodka and bourbon, spirits that chemically outlast the apocalypse, sitting in glass for decades, remaining potent and pure, regardless of calendar dates. They don't understand that ethanol at 40% ABV or higher kills surface bacteria as effectively as hospital-grade solutions. They catastrophically fail to recognize post-collapse currency. When the economic collapse erases paper money into worthless kindling, a sealed flask of whiskey trades for life-saving antibiotics, for critical ammunition, for urgent labor. They are self-righteous teetotalers dying in infection's grip, surrounded by valuable barter goods they dismissed as mere vice, penniless in the new economy. You stockpile liquid utility, high-proof distilled spirits, unflavored vodka, straight bourbon, overproof rum, sealed in original glass containers, stored in cool darkness, chemically immune to temporal degradation. Medical applications, crude but effective field sterilization for traumatic wound irrigation, instrument disinfection before surgery, surface decontamination when bleach stocks are exhausted. Practical utility, aggressive solvent for mechanical degreasing, reliable accelerant for fire starting in wet conditions, neutral base for creating herbal tinctures that preserve medicinal plant potency indefinitely. Economic function, 50 ml airplane bottles become fractional currency, divisible barter goods capable of trading for single meals, precise ammunition counts, or specific favors. Psychological warfare, carefully measured doses blunt the razor's edge of constant hypervigilance, chemically enabling necessary sleep when the perimeter remains uncertain, and threats are auditory hallucinations. The bottle is a multi-tool. It sanitizes the blade that excises infected flesh. It purchases the penicillin that prevents secondary complications. It ignites when the forest is soaked and magnesium fails. But no liquid courage fills the crushing void of isolation. Because the most critical resource cannot be shelved in glass. It breathes, it thinks, it watches your six when exhaustion blinds you, the silence breaks you. In a prolonged SHTF scenario, the absence of normalcy becomes a psychological chainsaw. Days of hypervigilance, listening for footsteps, interpreting shadows as threats, calculating calories and ammunition, erode the prefrontal cortex. Decision-making collapses. Emotional regulation fails. The man who could field strip a rifle in the dark now sits catatonic, staring at a wall, unable to choose between watch rotation schedules. Paranoid psychosis sets in. The isolation of survival, devoid of laughter, melody, or mental escape, drives competent preppers to suicidal hopelessness faster than dehydration. The body lives while the mind rots. The sheep strip their kids to essentials. They discard the paperback, the harmonica, the deck of bicycle cards as dead weight. They embrace pure utilitarianism, believing comfort is weakness, that stoicism means suffering without relief. They grind their teeth for weeks, months, adrenaline burning until cardiac arrhythmia sets in. They snap at allies over trivial disputes, fragmenting the community they need. They lie awake at night, mind racing through catastrophe scenarios, unable to achieve restorative sleep because they've removed every off switch for their anxiety. They become dangerous, unstable, eventually eating their own guns because the silence of the end times is deafening and they have no way to hear anything else. Yukashi sanity, a waterproof copy of The Road or Hatchet, stories of survival that mirror your struggle, providing catharsis and perspective, a harmonica or a jaw harp, 5 ounces of brass that transform a bunker into a space for music, for the primitive brain to feel safe enough to create. Playing cards, poker keeps the mind calculating odds without the pressure of life and death. A chess set, strategic thinking maintained without ammunition expenditure. Simple toys for children, crayons, a stuffed animal, the normalcy that prevents developmental trauma and keeps the next generation functional. These are not luxuries. They are prophylactics against PTSD, against cortisol poisoning, against the despair that kills as surely as hypothermia. The mind needs rest to remain lethal. Sharpen the axe, but also sit by the fire. Read the same page twice. Lose a hand of solitaire. Let the child color, because the man who can laugh in the dark is the man who survives the dark. But laughter doesn't warn you of the storm incoming. For that, you need ears beyond your own. Drop a comment below. What comfort item would you never abandon in a crisis? A specific book? A deck of cards? A family photo? Tell me what keeps you human. You are flying blind. In a grid-down scenario, the smartphone becomes a brick. The cell tower, stripped of diesel for their generators, falls silent within hours. The internet, that infinite nervous system of information, collapses into fragmented islands. You do not know if the neighboring county is under martial law. You cannot hear the wildfire warning. You miss the news that the bridge 3 miles east has been destroyed, turning your evacuation route into a dead end. The world is happening around you. Disasters, opportunities, threats, and you are deaf to all of it. Information is the ammunition of survival, and you are unarmed. The isolation of ignorance breeds panic. Panic breeds fatal mistakes. The sheep trust the glowing rectangle. They assume the network is eternal, that someone, somewhere, will always push the signal. They carry battery packs the size of car batteries, desperately recharging dead phones, worshipping the hope of a single bar of signal that never returns. They listen to static, misinterpreting carrier wave hums as suppressed transmissions. They do not own a radio that does not require an app. They do not know the local repeater frequencies. They are children screaming into a void, expecting the digital mother to answer. When the SHTF scenario extends beyond 72 hours, they are the last to know about water contamination, about approaching storms, about the organized banditry moving systematically through their sector. They are killed by surprise because they severed their own ears. You establish redundant communications. Primary, hand crank emergency radios. Midland, Kaito or Sanjan models. AM, FM, Chut No AA weather bands, hand-cranked, solar-backed, USB out capable of trickle charging a phone for a final text. These receive the emergency alert system. They tell you when to evacuate, where the shelters are, if the National Guard is active. Secondary, scanner radios, programmed with local police, fire and EMS frequencies. In the chaos of collapse, these channels carry raw intelligence, roadblocks, riots, resource distribution points. Tertiary, ham radio. The amateur bands. This requires a license, FCC technician class, a 35-question test, $35 fee, but grants you the ability to transmit across continents without infrastructure. Baofeng UV5R radios are $25. A 2-meter antenna on your roof reaches the local repeater network. When the repeaters die, HF rigs with long wire antennas skip signals off the ionosphere, connecting preppers in a web of mutual aid and intelligence. Listen before transmitting. Know the nets. Understand that every broadcast reveals your position, but remain connected. Because the man with information sees the chessboard. The blind man stumbles into checkmate. Your dollars are fuel. In a grid-down economic collapse, the paper in your wallet ignites fires better than it buys bread. The digital numbers on your banking app vanish into the electronic ether, frozen by bank runs or government controls. The gold coins you hoarded, impressive, heavy, intrinsically valuable, are impossible to break into change for a single meal. You cannot shave 1/10 of an ounce from a Krugerrand to trade for antibiotics. You are rich and starving simultaneously, holding concentrated wealth that cannot transact in the granularity of daily survival. The economy of desperation runs on immediacy, not investment. The sheep hoard valuables that mark them as targets. They stockpile bulk ammunition in cases of 1,000 rounds, then try to trade a handful for food, advertising to the desperate that they possess the only currency that matters. They barter their last food stores, starving themselves to acquire temporary goods. They trade firearms to strangers, arming potential enemies. They carry gold flakes, attempting to weigh micrograms in the dark, arguing purity and assay while the other party considers simply bludgeoning them and taking the hoard. They do not understand the psychology of the black market. Transactions must be fast, anonymous, and involve zero regret. You cannot trade what you need to survive. That creates resentment. That creates violence. You cash trade goods that are luxuries, not necessities. The logic is ruthless. You stockpile items everyone desires but no one desperately needs for immediate survival. Coffee, vacuum-sealed Arabica beans, divided into 1-ounce foil packets. A single cup's worth trades for labor, for information, for a single round of ammunition. Hard liquor. Those 50 ml shooter bottles, sealed, branded, providing immediate chemical relief or medical utility. Tobacco, cigarettes in crush-proof tins, individual sticks becoming loose change in the post-money era. Reading glasses, 150 diopter cheaters, cheap now, priceless when the literate cannot function. Hard candy, sucrose packed in wax paper, morale boosters for children, instant energy for scouts. Ammunition only in small, expendable quantities. 20 rounds of Dasuntuntuntus LR, not your defensive 5.56. The rule is strict. Never trade what you need. Trade surplus comfort. Trade vices. Trade the small indulgences that desperate men will pay anything to feel human again. Position yourself as the merchant, not the desperate. Because in the SHTF scenario, the man with trade goods is the man with power. The man with only essentials is the man who gets robbed. You have the map. The 15 pillars are laid out. The knowledge is free. The execution is on you. The majority will not act. They will bookmark this video, feel a moment of urgency, then return to the streaming service and the comfort of normalcy. They will tell themselves there is time. They will spend next weekend on entertainment instead of inventory. When the grid goes down, they will be the ones knocking on your door, begging for what they had years to acquire, demanding you share the surplus they mocked you for building. Do not be the majority. Audit your supplies tonight. Check your water purification method. Count your fire-starting redundancies. Look at your medication cabinet and see the expiration dates counting down. Walk into your garage and ask yourself, if the stores never reopen, how long do I live? Be honest. The answer will terrify you, or it will mobilize you. The window is closing, the instability is rising, the systems you trust are held together by confidence, and confidence is fragile. When it breaks, you do not get a warning broadcast. You get silence, darkness, and the hard mathematics of survival. Prepare today or die tomorrow. The choice is binary. The time is now. Move.